Hello and welcome to our Create Flow webinar series. Today we're exploring another part of the Create Flow model, turning intent into impact. So we're in the bottom left. So if you've ever left a leadership meeting thinking, we've had a brilliant discussion, so why has nothing actually changed? Then this conversation's for you.
I think this really comes as well from, we've done a lot of reflection about the things that get in the way of good intentions. It's an interesting area as a coach, isn't it? Because the reality is every organisation we work with has the best intentions. They genuinely want people to do well. They want people to develop in their careers. They want people to be healthy, have good well-being. They want they're intending the teams to be high performing, healthier cultures, all of that, which is fantastic. And it has to start from an intention, a positive intention. But what we do know is that intentions on their own that actually don't create that impact, don't create that outcome. It's what happens after the meeting or after setting the intention, doesn't it, that really matters.
Yeah, exactly. So there's often no shortage of ideas. The challenge is turning those ideas into a consistent behaviour across the board, and therefore measurable outcomes. And that's where we see organisations getting stuck.
Yeah.
Why good intentions don't always lead to change.
Yeah.
Why do you think this happens? Why do so many good ideas fail to become a reality?
Well, as I say, it's certainly not because people don't care. I think it's, what's been at the heart of us developing this model. I think it's more because the pressure gets in the way. Whether that be time pressure or, headspace pressure or client pressures, whatever it is, there's a lot that's going on that can get in the way of those good intentions. It's fantastic. We love that word, don't we? When we have a strategy day or a team day and people come away on a high and they've got all these great plans and there's a lot of inspiration. And a lot of action in the mix to go away. But the reality is that we see time and time again is once people are back into the workplace, into the pressure, into meeting those challenges of the reality of the work, very quickly the urgent stuff pushes out the important stuff. And people can easily slip back into firefighting, can't they?
Yeah, it's something we see all the time. Everyone agrees what's important, but the daily demands slowly pull attention away from those intentions. Before long, people are back to the old habits, and I think that's really important to recognise as well, because they don't see it happening.
Yeah.
They don't realise it's happening.
Exactly. And then habits is a big topic in itself, because as human beings, we create habits very easily, but changing habits actually takes a lot of time. And there's a lot of our work as coaches, isn't it, in terms of supporting people with creating new habits and those adaptions and things. But habits that develop under pressure are really interesting, aren't they? Because this is often the gap that happens between intent and impact. In that gap is where, we've got a choice point, really, haven't we, between creating good habits or the habits that actually take us away from getting the impact we want.
I think we often talk about the gap between knowing and doing, or being and doing. I think most leaders already know what good leadership looks like.
Yeah, I'm sure there's no surprise when people looking at our model saying, yep, of course. But that's why we've created this other side of the model, isn't it? Because it's important we actually look at what can easily slip in. I think this is the key bit. And how do we get back to what good leadership looks like? And so leaders they always know that they should be delegating more. They do know that coaching is better than solving people's problems for them. Of course, they want to have better conversations. They want to protect that time for thinking, that strategy work. they want to get that balance in their life, you know, have time for the gym, their family, as well as their businesses. But the challenge is doing those things consistently under pressure, and importantly, when the pressure actually increases, how do you maintain and sustain that?
Well, that links nicely into the shield, doesn't it? And we've talked about the shield quite comprehensively in the previous videos.
Definitely.
Unless people have capacity, which we've talked about, it's incredibly difficult to sustain intentional action. So the capacity piece is profound. So, for example, there's one client that really brings this to life. They were leading a growing organisation. They were exceptionally capable, very driven, very ambitious, and also very conscientious. But every day they're firefighting, and there becomes the habit. They're involved in every decision. Everything has to be perfect before they feel comfortable in moving forwards on anything. All of the decision processes slow down. Meanwhile, their competitors are moving faster and winning their contracts. I mean, I think this is a common story for clients, but that is just one example.
Yeah, and it's like those tipping points, isn't it, really, again? Because, you know, none of the challenges come from lack of ability, skill. Well, actually, maybe some of it from skill, but not the sorts of skills we learn on MBAs. It comes from, at the end of the day, our nervous system, the anxiety that can get in the way, can't it? We might have a genuine desire to make the right decision, but we can get so caught up in the avoidance of things and protection of things, you know, and can't we? You know, avoiding mistakes, wanting to protect the organisation. We go too far with that anxiety running the show. All of that care just gets so much that it actually starts to become a barrier, doesn't it?
I think through coaching, they begin to realise and recognise what these patterns are. So instead of needing all of the information, they start to become more comfortable in making live decisions earlier, and start moving towards things as opposed to moving away from them. Start to trust their teams a little bit more.
Yeah.
As well as delegate responsibility. I think the trust piece is massive. It's not that they. I think if you ask them, do you trust your team? They'll say yes. It's not. It's a deeper understanding of what that trust looks like. Creating space for bigger picture thinking, which seems like a luxury today, doesn't it? I mean, but we've got to start creating a bit more space for some thinking in general, let alone bigger picture thinking. But I think big picture thinking is important, and also spending more time listening to what the customers are saying, and watching what the markets are doing, rather than just being buried in the operational details.
Yeah, I think that's the piece as well. That last thing you were just saying is really true, because in the sort of firefighting, in the panicking, in the sort of, we've become quite fixed and short-term sort of focus, and we do become quite inner navel gazing, don't we, in that way, where actually that expansive, looking wider, being more alert, more aware of what's going on in the market, because it's shifting and changing all the time, and at the end of the day, we need to be focused in on what customers are doing, what they want, what their needs are, because that's shifting all the time, isn't it? It's so easy to lose sight of all that, isn't it? So easy. We've seen this with some of the organisations, just how the change happens once they've actually got time and space to go out and spend more time with customers and trusting their teams to get on the internal stuff. It's a real game changer.
I think it's an important point. So turning intent into impact isn't about trying harder.
Yeah.
We're talking about building systems that help good intentions survive real life, I think would be a reasonable translation of what we're saying here.
Yeah, definitely. And it comes back to that adaptive leadership and the agility piece as well, because, you know, it's about responding to what's going on around to get the impact that you want to have, not getting caught up in what the original plan was, or not noticing that customers' needs have changed, etc. So it's that real art of being expansive and wide and aware, but also really clear action and decision making and confidence to keep moving forwards.
Yeah. And bringing the values into that, making them more visible in that everyday behaviour as well. Yeah, absolutely.
That's it. I mean, values is a great thing to guide decision making. All this ambiguity in VUCA world, isn't it? You know, we need guiding principles to make some decisions around, and ones that everyone's bought into. It's so important, isn't it? Because everything stalls otherwise without that kind of common understanding of these principles.
And one of the other important points in the model we talk about is this point of intelligent failure. Because if we're serious about innovation, mistakes are inevitable. We need to make that okay.
Yeah.
So the question isn't whether or not something goes wrong. It's what we learn from this, what are we learning about this, what are we doing about that, and you know, that whole iterative process is so important.
Yeah. And it sits alongside safety and the psychological safety side of things that we already spoken about, because I mean, I love Amy's work, and she's really expanded it into this intelligent failure piece as well. But it's been around in the design community, hasn't it, for a long time, this more iterative way of design thinking. And it's what we're seeing is absolutely essential, isn't it, in businesses to work at pace, to keep up and keep, you know, delivering things. So yeah, that really, I think, intelligent failure is that piece where, you know, it's not about punishing mistakes, because as soon as we start focusing in too much on what's going wrong, people stop trying. Everyone goes into like minimizing, attracting. But it's about really creating the culture, the environment where people are able to experiment. People want to actually go further. They want to keep trying, innovating, adapting, improving. And as soon as, you know, it's just keep checking in, isn't it? Tuning, keep improving. And those feedback loops are really important in this section of our model. Really dialing up the feedback loops with customers, internally, all over the place, so that we can keep iterating, keep improving, and keep things moving forward in a way that isn't just about putting out fires.
Yeah, I mean, I think
long term.
Yeah, and I think the problem is people might hear us talking about agility or adaptation a lot, and they think that what we're talking about is you constantly have to change things or change direction, and that's not what we're saying.
No, not at all. It's about, you've got to have that guide in mind where you're getting to, but you've got to be able to adapt on the way, haven't you?
Yeah. So perhaps there's a few questions that people watching could ask themselves, just thinking about this with regards to your own organisation, your own business. You know, where are we full of good intentions but struggling to create lasting change? I think that's an important question. What important conversations keep happening but never quite become action? I think that's a very important question. What habits are helping us? And what habits are quietly holding us back? I think it's really important to start looking at what are our, you know, even in teams, within organisations, these habits become collective, by the way, not just individual. So it's worth identifying and shining a light to get some awareness around what these habits are.
Yeah, and the habits are the piece that kind of a very practical way, but then what sits behind the habits, the culture that enable those habits to actually take shape. So that's where it's really important when we're looking at, if we really want to impact, we also need to really think about, are we just expecting people to try harder, put in more hours, for example? Or are we actually creating the conditions that make successful execution much more likely? Because they're two different. That question of really thinking of creating the right conditions for positive habits to take shape is the important thing.
Yeah. So we draw this video to a close. If there's one message we'd like you to take away from today, it's this: impact doesn't happen because intentions are good. It happens because intentions become consistent behaviours repeated over time.
Yeah. And I'd like to just bring us briefly back to the shield before we go as well, because when people have that capacity, then they have clarity about what is important. And then when we know what's important, they create intentional habits that are linked to what's really important. And then if they're willing to review and adapt and get feedback around their habits, then that's what organizations need. And change is not like a change program. It's about actually seeing that change in action and things really coming to life.
So thank you for joining us. I'll just pop up our QR codes. There's another couple of blogs that are just about to be published, but we have got a couple of blogs already on the website. And also you can schedule a call to talk about this with us. We really want to encourage people to reach out, book a call with either Jill or myself or both of us, discuss what's happening in your organisations. We'd love to have a chat with you about it. How is this resonating for you? What are you finding very relatable in this series that we're talking about? So until the next video, thank you very much, and see you next time. Enjoy your summer.
Thanks for joining us. Bye.